Hello everyone, it's Hugh here at Loxone, and I'm here with our third day of our Foundation Series webinar. So over the last couple of days, we've looked at an introduction to Loxone. I've gone over who we are, where we come from, what we do and why we do it. Yesterday, we went over some basics of config, how config is laid out, how we would create a new project, connect to a mini server and start with a configuration. So something like a switch into a function block, into an output. Now we are going to obviously need to expand this system. If I just go by what's based in this demo case here, then in this demo case, we have far more than just a mini server. We have a mini server, but we've also got some extensions. We've got a tree extension, we've got an airbase extension, and then we've got some tree peripherals. We've got an RGBW dimmer tree that controls this LED strip. We've got a touch tree that's going to be our switch. And we've also got a motion sensor tree. So I'm going to need to, before I can get these things to work, get these extensions added. And so that is going to be our focus of today, is going to be extensions. So we are going to be looking at adding and replacing extensions and then pairing of tree and air devices. So this is going to be our agenda. We're going to again connect the demo case. We're going to search and add extensions. I'm going to show you how you can add extensions that you don't physically have yet as well, because I may want to add something like a relay extension later on in the project that I don't physically own yet. And we can do that. And then I'm going to show you how we can add tree and air devices and how we can then pair those devices in so that we've got the physical ones we have available ready to use. So a quick overview of our extensions then. So we've pretty much covered what the mini server is. This is the brains of the operation. This is the thing that makes everything tick. The mini server itself, depending on whether you get the mini server or the Go, obviously only has a certain amount of things built into it. This mini server, for instance, we've got digital inputs, analog inputs, relays, and a branch of tree built in. These relays are rated to 10 amps. We might need 16 amp relays for certain high load circuits. We might need mains dimmed circuits to control. We might need to do RS-232, 485, many other potential protocols and communications. And this is what extensions are for. With extensions, we can expand our system beyond just a mini server to cover as many different things that we need to talk to as possible. Here, you've got an overview of some of our extensions. The first extension is aptly named the extension. It's almost like this is the first one we ever made. The extension gives you more digital inputs, more analog inputs, more analog outputs, and more relays. So it's just an input and an output board, basically, to give you more of those things. Then we have something like this. This is the dimmer extension. The dimmer extension is designed for mains dimming. And so what we have is we give you 8 more digital inputs, again, just because we're nice and we like to give you little bits of extra things wherever we can. You could use those for wiring in third-party switches, door contacts, and the like. And then at the bottom, these red terminals, these are your mains dimmed circuits. So a dimmer extension gives you 4 channels, otherwise known as 4 circuits of mains dimming. So you've got live and neutral in, neutral and live out on each of these blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. With mains dimming, big thing to bear in mind is we are quite cool in the fact that we can do both leading and trailing edge, and you can actually change it on a by-channel basis. So this one could be leading edge and that one could be trailing edge. It's really cool. Not a lot of manufacturers can do that. We can also do both 0-point crossing of the voltage and the current for dimming as well, both on leading and trailing edge. So we can very nicely change between whether you're doing a traditional resistive load or a capacitive load like an LED. Big thing to note about the dimmer extension is the channel ratings. Channel number 1 is rated to 400 watts. Channels 2, 3 and 4 are rated to 210 watts. And that's their absolute rating, including inrush. So if you are doing mains LEDs, please account for the inrush current. That's the spike of current you get when you first start them up because the capacitor has to charge. Cool. Next to the dimmer extension, we have the relay extension. And that's what I have here in my hands. The relay extension does exactly what it says on the tin. It gives us relays. Each relay is rated to 16 amps at 240 volts. So mains voltage, 16 amp relays. Then we've got all of these other extensions as well. So we've got the airbase extension, analog output extension, analog input. So just if you need more of those. DMX is short for digital multiplex. It's a lighting, or primarily a lighting interface for an open protocol addressable lighting system that was invented for stage lighting. You've then got, that's not actually an extension, that's actually an air peripheral, but that's for LED tape. You've then got DALI. DALI is another open lighting protocol, digital addressable lighting interface. We've got our own tree extension for speaking to our tree devices. We've got more digital inputs, RS232, and then we've also got RS485, Modbus, and various others as well. Somebody's asked if there is a minimum wattage on the dimmer extension. The short answer is no and yes. I can't remember exactly which way round it is, but for leading edge, I believe there is not a minimum load, but for trailing edge, I think there is. It's all dictated on our documentation pages, but for one of them, there is no minimum load, and for the other one, there is. When you're doing the mains LED option, which is the current crossing detection, then you don't really have to worry about the minimum load. And that's also why it's so important that we have the neutral in for every circuit as well. But anyway, there we have it. There is a quick overview of our extensions. And you can see here, these are all of our available extensions. So the one-wire extension, that would be used for connecting things like one-wire temperature probes to stick in your underfloor screed or to wrap around the pipe of a manifold to measure flow temperatures. Analog inputs, air for our wireless, analog output, DALI, digital inputs, dimmers, DMX, N-Ocean, don't really use it in this country, but we've got it. Extension, Froling is a boiling manufacturer, Internorm's a window manufacturer. IR extension, we actually is discontinued, but we still support any legacy systems with it. We now do IR over air. KNX, Modbus, relays, RS232, 485, and tree extensions. And as it says here, this is to give us additional interfaces so that we can expand the functionality of the mini server to scale the project to any size and anything we need to control with it. Brilliant. Now that we've looked over extensions and what they are, let's get around to the config. So I am just going to open up the config file from yesterday. Here it is. Something to note about our extensions. All of our extensions come in two sizes. We do extensions that are big. These are the same physical size as the mini server. And we do extensions that are small. That is a quarter of the size of the mini server. All of our extensions come in one of those two sizes, one of those two form factors. Makes it quite easy to work out panel sizes. Brilliant. So here is my config file from yesterday. Just to refresh your memory, reconnecting to the demo case. So I could select this here and select search and then find it and put in my username and password and connect. That's one option. The other option is I could just press connect, make sure the IP address, the username and the password is correct and press connect there. When it's connected, we can see that this now changes to disconnect. It tells us that we're connected to the mini server and we've got the option for load from and save in now available. I'm going to switch my video over to the demo case as well so that we can get a proper in-depth look at this. And first, let's start talking about mini servers and extensions. Now, something really, really nice about Loxone is if you've got our products, like our extensions, our air and tree devices, they like to identify themselves in some way. So you can see that on on most of these products, we've got LEDs. The LEDs obviously mean something for different colors. So green flashing, that means good. So if I stop showing my screen for a second so that you can see this nice and big. So flashing green LED, that's good. That means healthy. This second LED on the mini server will light up to tell you about any potential problems. It will be amber if there is a warning, and it will be red if there's a critical alert. On the other extensions, they can flash orange. Orange means that they're healthy, that they're okay, but they haven't been connected to a mini server yet. So these flashing orange are telling me that they're all healthy and good, but they don't have a mini server that they're a part of yet. If they flash red, it means that there is a problem with them, that something isn't right. If they flash green, it means that they're connected to a mini server. And if they flash red, green, orange rapidly, it means that I have selected them in config. For air and tree peripherals, again, they have different ways of identifying themselves. In fact, on the back of the touch switch, there is also a little LED as well. Again, orange means that it's healthy, but it's not connected to anything. It will stop flashing when it's connected, because obviously a flashing PIR, flashing motion sensor, isn't very nice. And again, it will flash red, green, amber rapidly when I've selected it in config. Cool. So back to the screen sharing. Let's start by looking at extensions and how we can add them. So now that I'm connected to the mini server, I have two ways of adding extensions to my system. I could either pre-add extensions that I don't physically have yet. And I do that by selecting the mini server in my periphery list, and then the top ribbon here, choosing add extension. I then get a list of all of the extensions I have on the system, and I can pre-add one that I don't physically have available yet. It then pops up into the periphery list, but you can see it's grayed out. It's grayed out because it doesn't have a serial number yet, so it hasn't been paired. So that's option number one. Option number two is if I'm connected to the mini server and I've got it selected in the periphery list, I can do an extension search. And when I do that, that opens up this box and it does a search across the Loxone link to see every extension that is connected to it. And you'll see that it is found two, an airbase and a tree extension. That's because those are the two extensions I have. This RGBW dimmer is not an extension, it's a tree device. So you can see there, it doesn't have a blue connector, it's got a green connector. It is connected to this tree extension. So these are my two extensions that it can see in the real world. If we start with the airbase extension, then when I select it here, it starts flashing rapidly, red, green, amber there. Again, if I just stop sharing my screen so you can see that. So that is now flashing red, green, amber really, really rapidly. Sorry, just red, green rapidly to tell me that that is the one that I have selected. So it's really, really useful if you've got a large panel which might have several dimmer extensions and you need to physically identify which one is which, all you have to do is select it. And then when I've got it selected, over here, I can choose the name for it, and then I can press the green plus to add it to my config. And you can see now there in the periphery list, it has just dropped itself in. And now it's saying status offline. The reason for that, I haven't saved into the mini server yet, which is also why it's still flashing amber here. My second extension, the tree extension, I could, if I wanted to, again, press the green button and add it in. However, I have actually pre-added a tree extension to my config file using the add extension option up here. So if I wanted to replace that one with my physical tree extension in the panel, then instead of adding it, I actually choose replace. And then it gives me the option of which extension I want to replace it with. So I want to replace it with that one that I pre-added. Press OK. And now look, that tree extension, it's replaced the serial number. Then, when both the extensions are added, save in mini server, and you can see now that a little green dot appears on them, and that is their health. So both showing green mean that both are online. And again, back to the demo case, you'll be able to see now that these three have green flashing lights. So they are now all healthy, and these are now connected to the mini server. So green flashy lights is cool, is good. Now, the other really, really cool thing, and I really, really love this. At the moment, the blinky order isn't really in order. They're kind of blinking a bit randomly. It's going this one, then this one, then this one. Wouldn't it be great if I could get these to blink in order? Short answer, I can. This is a little bit of German engineering. If you select extensions, or rather anything that goes in the panel that flashes, if you select it in the periphery list and take a look at the parameters for it, you've got installation place, and you've got row and position. So row would be the DIN rail, and position is the position on that DIN rail. So my mini server would be row 1, position 1. Then my tree extension would be row 1, position 2. My air extension, row 1, position 3. And once you've got all of those positions sorted and you save in, after about a minute, the lights will order themselves. And in fact, it's actually already done that now for me. And they then blink in order. Just really, really nice. It means that you can have an entire panel that the entire lights blink in sequence all the way down the DIN rails. Cool. Other than that, I could add in as many extra extensions as I wanted. If I wanted to add myself a dimmer extension that I don't really have, I could add one in. You'll notice on certain extensions, it will come up with a dialog reminding you to do something. So on a dimmer extension, it's come up reminding me to set the dimming type for each channel. That's because we don't know whether your lights are going to be leading edge or trailing edge, and getting it the wrong way around can cause damage to the extension. So by default, on a dimmer extension, analog outputs and all of the outputs have type of dimming off. So you need to remember in each of the outputs to set what the dimming type is. And as I said, you could set a different dimming type for each output, something that's quite cool about the dimmer extension. But long and short of it is that is how you add extensions to the mini server. Wonderful. Let's just save that in. And let's get on to the next bit, which is going to be how we then pair in air and tree devices. So we've got our extensions added. Let's now start adding in tree and air devices. I don't actually have any air devices on me. Everything in the demo case is tree. So this is tree, and this is tree. Now what we can do is, again, I could go on the tree extension, and you see when I expand the tree extension, it gives me the two branches, left and right. That's because if you remember, a tree extension has a left and a right branch. Each branch you can connect up to 50 devices. So with tree extension, if I select that in the periphery list, the ribbon at the top changes, and it is exactly the same as extensions. I can manually add a device, so I can go add tree device and manually add a touch switch. This could go by my door in the kitchen. So you'll see it also comes up with an installation place and a room whenever you add anything. And I could manually add it. And again, you'll see it's grayed out and there's no serial number present. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is exactly the same as with extensions, a tree device search. This then opens up a dialog. It looks out across the tree extension and looks for all of the devices that it can see. So everything on this left-hand side is everything it can see physically wired, and everything on the right-hand side is what's in my config file. And this is something else that is really, really cool. There is a two-way identification. So every time I wave my hand over this motion sensor, you can see that it flashes yellow and the identification number goes up. So that's me waving at it and it's identifying itself to me in this dialog. The other way is if I select it in this dialog, then in real life, the device starts flashing rapidly, red, green. just like the extensions do. So again, it identifies itself. So this motion sensor, I don't have one in my config file yet to replace it with, so I want to add this as a new device. So what I do is this first option here where it says new device, I choose the room that I want to put it in, and I choose the installation place for it. Room and installation place is so important for devices because otherwise your config file is going to be a complete mess. Once I've got the room and the installation place, I press this right arrow here and it then populates it in. You can see it's now moved onto the RGBW dimmer, and I probably don't have to go big screen on my, my webcam, but I will anyway. You can see that with that selected, not only does the RGBW dimmer flash rapidly red-green, but it also makes whatever's connected to the end of it flash as well. So you've got two-way identification of both the device and the output connected to it. So again, RGBW dimmer, that'll go in the kitchen. Now, this is where I get a bit different because this dimmer would probably be installed in the panel in the plant room or in the electrical cupboard, wherever it's going. But I like to put the room as where the strip would be. So the strip would go in the kitchen and it would probably be under the counter, something like that. And then again, right arrow, and in it goes. Next, we move over to the touch switch. And I don't know if you can hear that. I'll try and get my microphone closer. So touch switches, when you select them, they click at you. So they do tap, 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 so that you, again, you can hear them because there's no visual LED that's present. It's on the back of it, so it makes it click. But again, I could also press it, and you can see here that the identification is going up. So again, two-way identification of the product. Now the touch tree, I've actually already pre-added one in my config file, so I don't want to create it as a new device. I actually want to pair it with a device I've already got in my file. And so what I do is instead of selecting new device, I select the device I want to pair it with instead, and then press the right arrow. And then that has just overwritten that one with the one I've really got available. Once all three are added, save in the mini server. And then what you'll see when that saves in is that stopped flashing. So it flashed a couple of times green and then stopped. And this is now also flashing green. This is flashing red-green rapidly because I've got it selected in the periphery list. So now all of these devices that are in the demo case are now learnt in, paired in. Wonderful. And with the RGBW dimmer, because that goes in the panel, I can again say its position. So that is position number 4. There we go. Which again means that I can get nice in sequence blinky lights. So save that in. And now after about a minute, all of the LEDs in here will be blinking in sequence. Again, really, really nice. And that is how simple it is to add in extensions and peripherals to a system. Manually add them and then replace them later on, or else add them in from the start. Now, if we take a quick look at some of these then. So now that I've got some tree peripherals added into this system, you can see here that I've got the motion sensor, the RGBW dimmer, and the touch tree. If I select any of them in the periphery list, they flash at me or they identify themselves in some way to me so I know where they are. I've got the parameters for them. So you can see that on a motion sensor, I could change its installation place and its room, and I can also change its sensitivity. But on a lot of these devices, you'll then see that there is a plus next to them. So if you then expand them, you can see that on a lot of Loxone devices, tree and air, there is more than one available input or output on a lot of them. That's because something like our motion sensor doesn't only detect motion, but it also detects brightness. So you can see that we have both inputs under here for motion and for brightness. One is analog, one is digital. I don't need to adjust any of the parameters, but you can also see that there are parameters available for it as well. Expand the RGBW dimmer, and I've only got the output. Expand the touch tree, and you can see that I've got the temperature, the humidity, and the T5. Temperature and humidity are pretty self-explanatory. T5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the 5 touch points of a touch switch. And as you can see, it's a combined input. It's because a lot of our predefined function blocks, like lighting controllers, have a T5 input on them, so we don't have to worry about mapping each individual button out. Loxone knows what to do with them. However, because the question always comes up, can I freely map the buttons? The answer is yes. You select the touch tree, the main device in the peripheral list, and then on the parameters, you can then show each of the individual buttons, and then you can freely configure with each one to your heart's content. The numbering scheme for the touch switch is left to right. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Brilliant. So we've added in extensions. We've added in tree devices. Air devices, exactly the same. You can either manually add them and then pair them later, or you can do an air device search and look across the air network for them. So now that we've got this, let's make this little bit of logic a little bit more clever. So I asked you yesterday, just before we finished, for anyone to figure out how we can do two-way switching. So one switch could turn the lights on and the other switch could turn them off, and vice versa. It's really, really straightforward. You put more than one input in the trigger. You can put as many inputs in there as you want to get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever way switching. I could, if I wanted to as well, also put the T5 in there, but I don't necessarily have to. Now, just to give you a tease of what we'll be going on to tomorrow, we will start looking at lighting and configuring lighting. Now, as I've already mentioned in the intro to Loxone, we like to think of lighting as more than just a switch on a wall that you can press and turn your lights on. We like to also have the idea that you can automate your lights based on motion, that after certain timeouts, your lights can turn off again. Now, a switch block, straight off the bat, turns something on or off. This is permanently on or permanently off. So this couldn't do dimming. So straight away, if we wanted to do something with dimming, we could use blocks like the dimmer block. And then if we wanted to bring motion into that as well, I mean, as you'll see here, you've got a trigger input again and a dim up, dim down, but you've got no inputs in there for motion sensors. So if we then wanted to bring motion sensors in as well, we could use something like the interface presence detection block. Or if we then wanted to tie in disablements at nighttime, we could probably bring in AND blocks to say if it's nighttime and the motion sensor goes off, ignore it. All of this would start to get very, very complex if we were having to build this logic up from scratch. So as you can probably imagine, for core features and functions that we have kind of made recommendations on, so things like lighting with motion-based lighting and switches as overrides, we have specific function blocks that have all of these features built in. And so we do have something exactly like a lighting controller, which has switch inputs, it has motion sensor inputs, and it has brightness inputs, all built into the block as standard. And so that is what we will start getting onto tomorrow, and we will start showing how we bring all of these peripherals in and start making them really work. The last thing for me to finish off with for today's webinar is, now that I have saved all of that in, at the moment, we've still only got that switch block configured. So that's the only thing that will still work. Input 1 and 2 will do output 1. And so if I'm in the app and I go to this switch here, I can see that input 1 can turn the switch on, input 2 can turn it off, and vice versa. So that's my two-way switching sorted. But in the app, this switch appears under the room of not assigned, and it appears under the category of controls. That is not correct. This switch is a light circuit. It's in the kitchen. So the last bit for me to finish off with today is how we make things go in the right places in the app. And it's again, parameters. So select your switch, and over here on the parameters, you've got category and room, and that dictates where this goes in the app. So I could change the category to lighting, and I could change the room to kitchen. And that then dictates where it goes in the app. So it's nothing to do with these page names down here. I could call this page name the dungeon, and it has absolutely no bearing on the app. The only thing that has a bearing on the app is the room and category here. And so this also means that I don't have to try and squeeze every bit of config for one room on one page. If it gets too much for one page, I can just create a new one. And you can do that via that button there. So just down there, you've got an option to create a new page. And you can create as many pages as you want. On the parameters of the page, you can give them whatever name you want. You can also, on a page, specify a default room and category for that page. So everything you drop on there will be given that room or category by default. So on this page here, which I'm actually going to rename as kitchen, I could say that everything I drop onto this page, I want to automatically be assigned to the room of kitchen. So I don't need to do it for every single thing. And then now in our app, the room is now kitchen, and this is now lighting. So we can see there, that has then altered the appearance of the app. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. Just to go back to the slides and just to finish off on the last couple of slides, and then as always, we will have the Q&A session. So the highlights of our topic. So don't ever feel that you're only limited to tree and air devices from Loxone. We have interfaces for just about anything. 232, RS485, KNX, DALI, DMX, one wire, Froling, mains dimming, just about everything. When you are adding, or when you've already added an extension in or a tree or air peripheral, when you select it in the list, it identifies itself in some way through a light sequence or through tapping. Every mini server can have up to 30 extensions connected to it. So one mini server can have up to 30 extensions. The extensions have to be cabled in a strict daisy chain from one to the next, a maximum of 500 meters of cable, and the last extension on the line with a resistor on. That resistor comes with the mini server. It's taped to the lid of the box. Don't throw the box away without grabbing the resistor. If you are going to go over 30 extensions, never fear, because you can also connect multiple mini servers together across the network to give you one big system. On a tree extension has two branches. Each branch you can connect up to 50 devices. And then on an airbase extension, you can pair up to 128 air devices to one airbase extension. So really, really flexible. You can also have more than one tree and air extension per system as well. If I wanted to, I could have a mini server with 30 tree extensions and every tree extension with 100 devices on. So 3,000 devices total. I could then have 5 mini servers on that same system. So I'll then get 5 times 3,000 as my total number. So really, really flexible. You've started to get an insight into config now. I hope you're starting to realize the level of power that's available with it, and also the level of flexibility and customization available in the app as well. I'm going to be continuing using this demo case throughout the rest of the series. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these and you would like to start the ball rolling with becoming a partner and discussing what's involved, that is the person you need to contact. Please get in touch with Megan and she can answer any questions that you have. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for joining. Hope you've enjoyed and you've learned something new today. As always, Presentation ends now, and then for everyone that's on live, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask anything that you want. Goodbye, everyone.